I found his shirt in our oven drawer, so I turned up the heat. People think a kitchen is for food. Mine was for worship. Heat, salt, steel, things that make other things honest. I saved for a year to tear out the builder-grade sadness in our condo and put in a cooking surface that purrs like a sports car and inhales steam like it's bored. I told my wife, Lena, if we get this right, we'll never need a date night again. We'll eat it. We did at first. She'd slide onto the counter in an old college t-shirt and watch me rain pepper over a steak, legs swinging like a metronome. I learned the exact second pasta starts talking back. I'd twirl a taste for her, hold it to her lips, and she'd hum with her mouth closed, the kind of sound that sells houses. Sometimes she'd lick olive oil from her wrist and pull me by the belt. If you've ever needed dough beside someone you love, you know it's a PG-13 love scene with flour. The night everything tilted, Lena came home glowing like a screen. "Girls' night," she said, which is the kind of throwaway phrase that should be sold with warning labels. She kissed my neck and I smelled citrus and a darker note I couldn't place. Cedar, maybe, and something mineral, like rain kissing hot concrete. She dropped her tote, laughed about a bartender who flirted too hard, and stole the last of my panna cotta with the kind of grin you forgive. I went to tuck a baking sheet into the oven drawer and felt fabric. Not a towel. A shirt, crisp white button-down, not mine. The collar still held the ghost of a heat press like it had been born in a suitcase. There was a lipstick half-moon on the inside of the cuff, not her color. Lena is a berry if I bother woman. This was coral, the dare of someone who wants to be seen in the afternoon. Inside the collar stitched the initials, M.R. I stood there with the oven light haloing a stranger's shirt and thought, this drawer is where heat sleeps. Who undresses in a kitchen? "Hey," Lena called from the bedroom, "did you leave the dryer on permanent press? My blouse is still damp." I slid the shirt back into the drawer like it was the last card in a trick and told myself I'd ask later, like a calm person. Later arrived and found me a coward. Over the next week, my kitchen betrayed me in small ways. A tea towel smelled like a cologne I couldn't name but had definitely met. The cut on Lena's lip, nothing. A nick from a dry day, bloomed into a story I didn't want to read. She'd lock her phone to check a recipe we were both reading on the laptop. When she laughed at nothing, the laugh was turned down, as if not to wake a sleeping dog. I'm not a jealous man by nature. I'm a man who believes in mise en place. Put everything in its place and you won't burn the garlic. The shirt in the drawer wasn't in its place. Neither was I. My friend Tamsin is the kind of person who can order for a table of 8 and hit every taste bud. She's also a human periscope. I called her and didn't say, "I think my wife is cheating," because I didn't. I said, "Do you and Dan want a Thursday supper? I'm testing a menu." "Testing you," she said. "We'll be pretty and hungry." "Bring your eyes," I said. She didn't ask why. On Thursday, I made dinner like it was a confession I wanted forgiven. Saffron risotto that tastes like a well-kept secret, halibut that flakes when you look at it, a salad of shaved fennel dressed so lightly it felt like a wink. I set the table with the linen we never use and the heavy glasses that make water important. Music low, lights warmer than they needed to be. If you're going to force the truth to show up, you should make it comfortable. "Who's coming?" Lena asked, pulling an earring through with her mouth half open. She was in a soft, slink dress that remembered our first summer. She looked like a promise I still wanted to keep. "Tamsin and Dan," I said, "and I invited your architect. What's his name again? The one you're consulting with on the studio build-out." Lena froze just enough. "Miles," she said. "Miles Richter, did you?" "Just thought it would be good to meet the man designing where you'll spend your days," I said, breezy in a way that was a little cruel. I plated fennel to cover it. The doorbell rang. Tamsin arrived in laughter and a dress cut like joy. She hugged me, eyed the room, and leaned up to kiss my cheek. "You set a scene," she whispered, as if the scene might set itself. Miles showed 15 minutes later with a bodega bouquet and a bottle of wine that overpromised. Tall, the kind of handsome you forgive your reflection for in store windows. He shrugged out of a jacket like he had practiced. His cologne cut the air, cedar slate, a low amber that thinks highly of itself. M.R. "Cal," he said. "Everyone calls me Cal except the patient who raised me, who still uses my full name when she's worried. Finally, great to meet." He shook my hand and then Lena, and there was a tiny offhand familiarity in the second shake that wanted to hide by being casual. "Welcome," I said, and meant it, because my mother taught me how to set a table even for people you might one day want to set on fire. We ate, we laughed. Tamsin asked smart questions and Dan chimed in when the silence needed a little salt. Miles talked about light as if it were a substance you could bottle, how afternoon sun in a north-facing room feels like a decision, how the right window is a choreography. When Lena added a detail, they made too much eye contact and then not enough, a dance you can't rehearse out of. At one point, I stepped to the oven drawer. The original sin rested where I'd left it, folded, the cuffs coral moon like a verdict. I set a small linen pouch on top of it, a pouch I'd sprinkled with saffron stains. I slid the drawer closed and felt like the kind of person who arranges facts in pretty jars. Dessert. Figs warmed in honey and thyme. I cut one and held it out to Lena with my fingers, and she leaned forward, lips parted, and took the smallest bite, her eyes on mine. It felt like an answer to a different question. I wiped honey from her bottom lip with my thumb, and she smiled a smile that wished for an empty apartment. After we said our good nights and the door latched and Tamsin texted me from the elevator 2 words, "Be careful," Lena returned to the kitchen and opened the oven drawer like it owed her money. She went very still. "You left this here?" she asked, not touching the shirt. "I didn't put it there," I said. She swallowed. "I didn't either." She reached in and the saffron kissed her fingers. When she lifted the fabric, the cuff had turned a fragile, expensive yellow. She noticed, because she's not the kind of woman who misses signals, even when they don't flash. "I should tell you everything," she said, not turning around. "I should." "You should," I said, and softened it by leaning back against the counter and not crossing my arms. Threats make people curate their answers. She put the shirt back into the drawer, gentle as a nurse. "Not here," she said. "Not with the smell of dinner. I want to keep liking this room." We went to the living room. She tucked her legs under her on the couch, reached for my hand, pulled herself away from doing something she might regret later, then put my hand on her knee anyway. The skin there was warmer than the room. "Miles and I kissed," she said, "twice." In a courtroom, people gasp. In a marriage, the oxygen just gets complicated. "In here?" I asked because it mattered. "In here," she said, and I pictured it. A tall architect with expensive ideas sliding his hands around a woman I'd promised to carry groceries for until the end. Suddenly, my halibut felt performative. "Why?" I asked. Not the prosecutorial why. The one you ask when you want to know if you're still in the room. She rubbed her temple. "I've been thirsty," she said. "Not for him, for the version of me that rooms like his reflect. He makes his living with lines and light. He made me feel outlined. We stayed late at the site 2 Tuesdays ago. He stood too close. I didn't step back. It felt like listening to my own echo in a beautiful hallway. And then I came home and you were whisking eggs with one hand and emailing a supplier with the other, and I didn't know how to tell you I wanted more attention. More being looked at. It sounds small and greedy when I say it out loud. It sounds human, I said, because something inside me unclenched when she failed to sell herself a better alibi. Did you? No, she said, quick enough to be true or the best lie. No bedrooms, no late checkouts, no anything that takes more than 10 minutes and a bad idea. What's his shirt doing in our drawer? She smiled, a court sketch of a smile. He helped carry in a shipment of tile samples last week. He got sauce on his sleeve at lunch. I offered to treat it. Remember my grandmother's club soda religion, and I forgot it in the drawer when the delivery guys came, and then I couldn't figure out how to tell you, hey, honey, there's a man's shirt in our stove. It's stupid. I am sorry for the stupid as much as for the kiss. It's not stupid, I said. It's sloppy. We sat in the kind of silence that knows everything before it hears it. Then she slid closer until our knees touched like a fuse. I miss you missing me, she said softly. Like when you'd make an excuse to brush past or lift my hair just to see the back of my neck. We got good at logistics. We didn't mean to get bad at worship. She placed my hand at the hinge of her jaw where it's tender. If you still want me, she said, tell me now. YouTube, relax. We kept it on the safe side of the fade to black. Kissing carries a story farther than people admit. Her mouth tasted like time and a mistake she didn't want to make again. I kissed her like someone who wants the scent of her to win every room, and when we stopped, she rested her forehead against mine until we both remembered that dinner dishes don't do themselves. The next day I texted Miles, coffee at the site, we should talk scope creep. Always, he replied, performing normal. He wore a navy sweater that said promotion. He smelled like the same cologne turned down to professional. The space looked like a decision in progress, beams exposed, wires like thoughts. He started talking renderings. I let him. I found your shirt, I said when he took a breath. His mouth remembered how to lie, but his eyes remembered the drawer. Cal. I'm not going to punch you, I said. I'm not that movie. You kissed my wife. Twice. You left your costume in my house. It won't happen again. It won't, he said, because this is how men say we know you could hurt us in ways we can't hire a contractor for. You're talented, I said. Build the room she deserves. Build it in a way that leaves her untouched when she's in it with you. That's your scope. He nodded. I handed him a linen pouch. He looked inside, confused, then smiled despite himself. Saffron. It stains, I said. So do most beautiful things. Be careful where you put it. On the way home, I stopped for flowers with stems that fight back. I cooked dinner like it was the first one again. Lena came in early, hair scraped up and eyes tired in a way that made me want to carry her from 20 feet away. She saw the flowers and the onions sweating in butter and leaned against the doorframe smiling like we'd survived a hurricane without getting wet. You talked to him, she said. I did. And he's going to build you light, I said. He's not going to build you a story. She walked to me, cupped my face, and kissed me hello in the middle of the kitchen, slow enough to be a decision. Thank you for choosing conversation over arson, she said. For the record, I said into her hair, I considered arson. We ate on the floor. We laughed with our mouths full. After, she washed while I dried, and every time our hands touched it felt like proof. We set the oven drawer to rights, towels only, heat sleeping where it belongs. Weeks later, Tamsin and Dan came back for a second Thursday. I rebuilt the menu with everything we'd become good at again. Timing, seasoning, the patience to let something rest. When I opened the oven drawer for the baking sheet, Lena slid her hands onto my hips from behind and said in my ear, "Turn up the heat." I did, and she hummed, and Tamsin made a face that said, "We are eating. please keep it PG, and we all laughed easy. Sometimes I still think about that crisp white shirt, the coral half-moon, the initials. How close we stood to being the cliché with the public meltdown and the wine throw. The comments would have had a field day. Instead, we made something small and private and adult, and we let it simmer until it was good. The kitchen smells like lemon peel and forgiveness now. On Sundays, we make pancakes and listen to records. I watch Lena dance with a spatula in one hand and her hair falling loose, and she looks at me like the mirror finally got the lighting right. If she wears coral lipstick, it's because she wants to leave a note on my skin I'm proud to read. People think a kitchen is for food. Mine is for truth. And sometimes when she leans across the counter and steals the last bite with her mouth on my fork, I let her, because some thefts you want to encourage.